worries. Thanks very much. Okay, you guys know me. My name is Evan. As I said at the start, I've been a founder 4 times now, startups in Japan. I had a few small businesses in Canada before I came to Japan, but I don't count those. And I'm an advisor at an Accelerator and mentor at Founder Institute. And I generally like to consider myself a go-to-market expert. GTM, go-to-market. This encompasses basically sales, marketing, and partnerships. All of the levers that you can pull or the channels that you can create in order to generate revenue. And my title is CRO. Do you guys know what CRO stands for? Once more?
Revenue.
Yeah, it stands for Chief Revenue Officer. And so it's a combination of like VP Sales and Chief Marketing Officer. Basically, it's overseeing sales and marketing together because I believe that these are so important, they should be the same function. Basically, your sales and marketing should be the same team. Also, feel free to connect with me. This is my main email address, and that's my LinkedIn profile. I do have a one-to-one meeting link on the LinkedIn profile. If you want to grab time with me, feel free to book a session. I would recommend the evening. That's when I'm generally most free, like around 9 p.m. That's a good time slot. Okay. So I want to start with this concept. GTM, your go-to-market strategy, is all about creating growth engines. Now, this is really important. Your job as a founder, your job when you're creating startups is to create growth. You can't provide value to your users if you can't grow the business big enough to get enough users and to be valuable. And you can't provide the return to the investors that they're looking for unless you can grow. Just as a sort of benchmark, VCs in Japan are looking for a minimum 3-time return on their investment, which is very kind. It's actually one of the lowest benchmarks in the world. In the US, it's minimum 10 times return on the investment. And if possible, they want like 50, right? They want unicorns. So you need to be able to build these engines of growth that get at least a 3x return. But not all businesses should look for venture capital. Some of your ideas are things that you can bootstrap yourself. And I highly recommend considering that. We don't all have to deal with VCs. That can be quite difficult, it's very time consuming, and it means you bring more owners, advisors, sort of co-business managers into your startup, and sometimes that can cause you to lose focus. So it's actually better to bootstrap sometimes. But still, in that case, you're gonna have partners, collaborators, supporters, your own staff, and for their benefit as well, you need to try to grow. So growing is very, very important. You need rocket ship level growth. So the definition of a startup is a high growth business. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because in Japan, that's not widely understood. Even at the top government levels, the current Kishida administration will talk about supporting startups, but it often translates into just new business creation. If your business isn't engineered for growth, it's not technically a startup. So startup culture, everything we talk about here, is engineered for high growth. All right, so how do you do that? This is maybe a little bit small, but I think you'll get the slides after, and you can look at this recording if it works. These are some of the growth strategies that you can focus on. These are the catchphrases that have become associated with Silicon Valley or with startup centers around the world, like Israel, for example. We could kind of call this the Silicon Valley recipe. A lot of these should be familiar terms. Obviously, innovation. This is all about innovation. Agile development, as opposed to waterfall, is part of the recipe. Lean startup, the lean startup methodology. This is a very famous book that came out, followed by lean startup, and it was lean analytics, and experimentation and optimization, and growth hacking. All of this is focusing around creating high productivity per hour. If you don't do this, if you can't create an engine for growth, and if you can't create these cultures of experimentation and optimization with a focus on high productivity per hour, you become like many of the famous Japanese companies who innovated in the 70s and 80s and then stopped, and today have become so corporate that they no longer innovate, they no longer follow these principles, thereby creating great opportunities for startups. The reason why I always advocate startups in Japan and this ecosystem, focusing on going global from day one, building a startup ecosystem that can go global from day one, is because it's critical for the Japanese economy. So I think we have a very, very important mission here. And the focus, again, needs to be on productivity. One of the reasons I like to focus on per hour productivity is because this is closely connected to work-life balance. In startups, it's very easy to get into working long hours, but I don't encourage that. If you can work really productive hours, if you're really good at it, maybe you only have to work 4 hours a day, and you can still create a lot of value. So very specifically, I'm just going to read this out. Growth hacking comes from this culture of experimentation and optimization, so data and testing. And I'd like you to think about applying this to all areas of the business. Hiring. When you hire somebody, how do you interview? A/B test your interview questions. When it comes to product development, A/B test product features. Get out of the building, talk to users, try different iterations, test and see what works best. And this is closely connected to the lean startup methodology. Same for sales and marketing. Your sales pitch, the pitches that you're doing now to introduce your business, A/B test those. Try different variations, different ways of explaining, different catchphrases. The more you A/B test this, the more you find out what actually works. The faster you run that process in short iterative cycles, the better you get. The more per hour productive you get, and the better the overall business gets. Now, one thing I'd like you to focus on, and this is really important in Japan, where the Kaizen process is often talked about, or the PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act process is often talked about. Run this in iterative, short circles, moving forward. In Japan, this tends to get run constantly in one place. Companies iterate over and over and over and over again, but they never move forward. So you can't just test and experiment continuously on the same thing. You have to move forward with this process. All right, now moving around the circle here, we have data and testing, creative marketing. Focus on marketing channels that lead to lead generation, that generate sales. Coding and automation, I think everybody's pretty familiar with this. This is very closely connected to agile development. Try to leverage tools like LLMs, very popular right now, right? Anything that can give you an assist, that can automate the process a little bit more. CI/CD, there are all sorts of tools that can help with the coding and automation component. And this is really important, and I think it doesn't get emphasized enough. Behavioral psychology. Behavioral psychology means understanding your users, how they think and feel, and why they will continue using your product. If you don't understand this part, you can't build a good product or service that will have a high retention rate. You will lose your users. You won't create fans that want to make recommendations to other people. So getting this right means you have to be empathetic, you have to understand people, you have to build a good internal culture that attracts the right team that you want, and you have to be able to give that externally to your users. And then moving in a little closer to this core of growth hacking is conversion rate optimization. So A/B testing, I talked a little bit about that. There are all sorts of tools that allow you to do this A/B testing or Kaizen process at scale. Lead marketing, test very small spends across different channels until you find your right fit. But don't try every channel because you think that that's what investors want to see. Find out where your audience is and target specifically to them. This is why your ICP, your ideal customer profile, or your target audience is so important. You don't want to be wasting your marketing efforts. This also means when you get somebody on your marketing team, don't get somebody who only knows how to do content marketing or who only knows how to do field marketing, like events, right? You need somebody who can do the full mix and be very efficient and very lean with all the different marketing that you do. Technical marketing, this starts to overlap into coding and automation, but you can think of this as basically attracting your engineering team, attracting the core resources that you need. This is also something that ties into this overall growth engine, right? So that's kind of the growth hacking recipe there. I also recommend the book Growth Hacking by Sean Ellis. Have you guys heard of that book before? I've actually got it in my bag, so I'll show you what it looks like. I used to work at a company that specifically did experimentation and optimization. I've worked at 3 of them actually, and we all use this in some way. So Hacking Growth, very good book. And it's a good practical strategy as well. All right, it has a lot of practical strategies that you can apply. Okay, and that building those engines of growth is closely connected to creating this flywheel. Has anybody seen this image before? Oh, really? It's a really, really popular image. David, do you know where I copied and pasted this from? Off of the HubSpot website. So HubSpot created this image. This is the HubSpot logo colors you can see here. It's basically the evolution of the old marketing and sales funnels that we used to talk about, where you were creating an audience, getting them aware of your product and then interested, and then moving through to buying the product and then advocating the product. So that can be thought of as a funnel. The problem is that if you use the funnel image, people will drop out of the funnel at each step, and then you have to get them back in. So it winds up being this loop where you're trying to get users back anyway. So I think it's more useful to think of it as this type of loop. In order to create growth, you need to attract users, you need to engage with them, and then you need to delight them. And they move from strangers, people you don't know at all, to prospects, people who are interested, to customers, to promoters. This is probably the most important part of the overall flywheel. So a flywheel is, maybe it's kind of an old image. Does anybody know what a flywheel is?
Well, it maintains its own momentum with its weight.
Yeah, it's a big disc that you get spinning, and it builds up energy and it retains the energy and keeps spinning. It used to be the thing that you cranked by hand to get a car started. That's a really old image, but now modern cars use it to generate energy and keep it going. You can also think of it as like a water wheel, like in the windmills they have, or water mills that drive machinery. It's partially the momentum of the wheel, the weight of the wheel spinning that keeps the water flowing. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to build up a customer or a user base that will keep growing because you're not losing any energy. The most important metric in SaaS, software as a service, is your churn rate or your retention rate, because it doesn't matter how well you can sell if you keep losing customers. You're selling on a subscription model, right? And if you can sign people up and they try the product for a while, but then they just stop using it, you can't keep reselling the subscriptions. So even if you create a great sales and marketing strategy and that funnel is optimized, but you keep losing people, you're not going to build a scalable growth engine. So you have to delight people, in order to retain them, and you have to get them to be super fans so that they promote the product. And that's what connects to most viral marketing strategies. If people love your product so much that they'll tell their friends about it, then you're building a growth strategy. It's like a strong engine for growth, this flywheel. So that growth comes from building a flywheel that delights users, it retains them, it keeps your daily active users high, or your MAUs, or your annual subscriptions, whatever metric you're focused on. And this is something that you need to A/B test as well. You need to be always optimizing this process. And the only way to A/B test something is to get data. And as a founder, you need to get that data firsthand, which means you need to sell. Don't hire somebody to sell your product. For the first few years, you need to sell. I know a lot of you are engineers and you're really excited about product and building great things, but you also have to get out of the building and talk to people and learn how to sell. Because you can't teach your sales team how to sell until you know how to do it yourself, because you've tested the process. You've gone out and talked to thousands of people, you've pitched to thousands of people, and you've figured out what works for them. And this is the famous Y Combinator advice: do things that don't scale. This is closely connected to that. Do things that don't scale sounds like bad advice. First time I heard this, I thought this was really bad advice. Because when you're building a growth engine, you need something that is repeatable, scalable, automatable. But actually, you can't build that automatable, scalable process until you get the simple things right. So do things that don't scale means crafting bespoke strategies, things that are very hands-on, very high value, like the pitches that you're practicing right now. You have to do that over and over again until the value proposition is extremely clear. The audience segment that you're targeting is extremely clear. The ICP is extremely clear. So at the start, those things require a lot of hands-on work. And this part requires a lot of talking to people. You have to talk to your staff, you have to talk to your team members, you have to talk to your partners, you have to talk to your users until you get to the point where you're delighting them and they're starting to become your fans. So the only way you can do that is with a lot of in-person time, a lot of conversations, a lot of hands-on practice. Don't hide behind your computer screen. You have to get it out there and talk to people. Finally, as you create your GTM slide, any good pitch deck needs at least one, sometimes 3 GTM slides. I've noticed everybody gets this wrong. This is the kind of famous TAM, SAM, SOM diagram. Total addressable market, serviceable addressable market, and serviceable obtainable market. When you craft this, start with your ICP, your actual audience segments. That's why you need a beachhead user group. And this connects back into doing things that don't scale. Your product might be something that you can sell to everyone, but you can't sell to everyone from the start. You have to start with these beachheads or these sort of smaller user groups where you can really get to know them, get to know their needs, surprise and delight them so that they become advocates of your service. So when you think of TAM, think of the total addressable market that you can turn into fans. It's not everybody, it's not all users. It's the ones that would really be able to use your product and create that growth flywheel where they continue to use it. So start by thinking about the ICP and retention rates. Then for the SAM, this is actually pretty easy. Just filter out the market that you can't reach right now, because it's not your addressable market. So maybe it's in a geography that you can't reach right now. Or maybe there are too many competitors that have market share right now. And maybe you plan to take market share away from those competitors, and you will be able to, but not yet. That's what SAM is about. At this level, it's like how much market is addressable. And addressable means you can actually create a strategy, you can create tactics to get it. And then obtainable, I like to think of this in terms of simple bottlenecks like hiring. This is the smaller part of the market that you can actually get, but only if you hire enough people so that you can develop the product to enough scale. Or only if you can hire enough people to sell the product. Or only if you get enough marketing budget to market to this segment. So again, think about TAM in terms of the whole audience that's a good fit, ICP. Then think about SAM by filtering for things like competitors who already have market share, then take what's left, right? Or geographies, maybe you can't sell to Europe today because you don't have any sales staff in that region, or you can't build a marketing strategy to attract that region. And then filter down to the really practical things. Most of us right now we're like 2 people, right? Maybe 5 people. How much can 5 people actually sell? How many conversations can you have in a day? And how many of those conversations will actually turn into prospects that you can put into your CRM, your sales management system? So think about those practical bottlenecks that you have today. Okay, that's it from me. Do you guys have any questions about this?
For the sum, how would you, I guess, go about helping us, I guess, figure out how to calculate things? There's obviously the top down, which is obviously not the best way. The best way is bottoms up, right? So how would we go about calculating that, factoring all those things into it?
Yeah, do you want to focus on SAM or
SOM.
SOM, okay. Yeah, so like you said, a bottom-up calculation is best. And it depends on your business model, right? So if you're B2B or B2C. If you're B2C and you have a, let's say an uncomplicated product or service, something that people can figure out for themselves, then what you need to do is create awareness and capture their interest so that they can come and try the product out in some way. So your bottlenecks there are how much marketing can you do and what will your conversion rate to the trial or the sign up for the product be? And so it's pretty easy to calculate that because you're pretty much just starting with how much traffic you can generate. So look at the channels that you know you're going to be good at. Ayaka, we talked about this recently for your business. You have a great channel already because you have a YouTube presence. So in order to generate traffic for your business, you could do SEM, search engine marketing. You could do, say, Google Ads. You could do social media promotion. Ayaka, in your case, it makes sense to start with YouTube because you already know how to do that. Even though your current business is not the same audience as the channel that you built before, you're an expert at building channels now, so that's where you would start. If you are a developer and you are really, really good at building websites, front-end websites that are lean and fast and well organized, so search engines know how to index them well, and you understand the basic SEM principles, you should probably start with SEM. Does that answer the question?
I know every business is different, so it's kind of hard, obviously. It's challenging to factor in everything, but I think that a lot of the things we need to factor in are assumptions at the beginning, right? We assume that this will be the best way, but it might not be, right? So how much importance do investors put in this slide?
Well, let's frame it for our current stage here, which is pre-revenue, very, very early, pre-seed. At this stage, you have to start with the available resources you have, what you know. What you're passionate about helps as well. So if you naturally are interested in YouTube and you watch a lot of YouTube videos, maybe you have some idea how to create interesting YouTube videos. And you know how people always end with a call to action, right? Like, subscribe, click this link. So maybe you have some knowledge about that. That's why I talked about SEM as another example. If you're really good at that, start with that. If you have somebody on your team who really understands how to do multivariate testing for ad copy and get you great conversion rates for a very low spend on a platform like Meta or LinkedIn, use that knowledge. Start there. Start with what's attainable. Basically, you've got a somewhat limited toolkit at the very, very early stage, so you start with the tools that you have to hand, and then you scale up from there. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question, and in my image, go-to-market strategy should have marketing strategy, like social media marketing or community marketing or something like that. But your slide doesn't have that. So what is that reason for I'd like to know your thought about it?
Well, the flywheel slide is actually talking about marketing channels, because it's talking about how you create the initial awareness and then move that through to customers and then people who are passionate about your business. So I had to try to keep it a little bit short, right? So I didn't want to have 10 slides. I was trying to condense it all into one. But that flywheel is specifically about which marketing channels you should use. So it's connected to the previous topic. You should start with the channels that you have some knowledge about or some competency in or some interest in using. So in social media, if you have a good network on Facebook, a lot of friend connections on Facebook, you can start there. Because when you start running your advertising campaigns, you're going to get a lot of reach and engagement just by getting likes and shares and comments from your friends. In my case, I stopped using Facebook because I don't like it. So I put almost all my campaigns on LinkedIn, and I also have over 8,000 followers on LinkedIn. So it's natural for me to use that channel. It's where my audience is, people who are interested in the projects that I've been working on and who might be interested in the things that I have to share. So that's a natural starting point.
So is that general to have a flywheel slide in the page deck?
The flywheel image is for your reference, and in your pitch deck, you have to make it really simple and really clear. Just explain what your marketing strategy is. So talk about the channels that you'll be using. So if you're going to start by creating a YouTube presence, then say that very simply. But you also, it's helpful if people understand how your flywheel is going to connect to your growth. So you can talk about your different stages of growth. So we'll start by going and talking to our friends and asking them to use the app. That's stage one. Stage two, we'll create a social media campaign that incentivizes people to tell their friends about it, maybe with a discount or maybe with a referral program or something like that. Or you could use, like the Dropbox example. They went viral, and that use case is in this book, by incentivizing people to sign up for the service. When you send a document link, then people say, oh, okay, this is a service I can use for keeping all my stuff in one place. Or a classic example was Hotmail, the first free email service to really become popular. Does anybody remember the name Hotmail? Okay, I think I had a Hotmail account in like 1995 or 6 or something like that. They went viral because they were the first email service to just put sign up for a free email account in the footer of every email. So every user of the service became a seller of the service, became a promoter of the service. That's a viral marketing.
Yeah, helpful. It makes sense.
Okay, good, good. Any other questions?
Another good example is the Dollar Shave Club video.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really, like, it's just a video, and then it went viral like crazy. It was really funny.
Yeah, that was a great example of really good content marketing. If we go back to the previous slide where I was talking about the mix for the growth hacking strategy, interesting content that will go viral. Actually, Dropbox is another good example of it. If you look for the Dropbox explainer video on YouTube, it's already it's 14 years old now, but it's still one of the best explainer videos I've ever seen. It's a very simple illustration, like stop motion explainer video that just talks about how hard it is to bring your stuff with you from device to device and place to place. But a video like that can be extremely helpful in building that growth engine. Okay, any other questions?
It's like on this, you talked about consider bottleneck. So like, let's say if you're doing a pitch where you're gonna have a ask at the end for a round, should your song be based on like assuming you get that round, that's the song you can obtain?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, specifically, what you're doing is telling investors how you're going to use their money so that they give it to you. So the song is all about realistically, give me X amount of money and this is what I will do with it. And everything that builds up to it in the GTM slides should be explaining, this is what I'm going to do with your money.
So that can be 18-month period, for example, to be very specific, or if you're targeting this.
Sure, the time period is not really connected to the concept of the GTM slides because it's so specific for the individual business model. If you're bootstrapping your business, then you might take years to get to that point, and that's okay because that's your business model. If you're a high growth startup and you're in, let's say, an incubator, if you're in like Y Combinator, you have 3 months. That's it. So the time period is very short, depending on your business model and depending on the relationship with the investors, their expectations, and their business model.
So I think time and some always like changing drastically, like some maybe like changing from the stage where we are.
Yes, yeah. Once you've identified the TAM and the SAM, they will only change because of external factors. So competitors will enter or exit, new markets will be developed. For example, 18 months ago, we didn't really have the whole LLM market that we have now, like ChatGPT was still emerging. So that's a big change, right? New categories can be created. But this is also a focusing exercise. You don't really have to care about TAM and SAM. You only have to try to control song.
We basically like show investors or like people that we have a market with time and sun, and some will be like what we need, what we gotta do.
Yeah, they want to see that you have enough song that they can get a 3x or 5x or 10x return on their investment. But if there isn't a large enough market for you to grow to that level, then they can't get the return. On the other hand, if you make it so big that it's just not realistic, it's not very helpful for them. So everybody who has, at the TAM and SAM level, if that's in the billions of dollars, okay. If you get down to SAM and it's still in the billions of dollars, as an investor, I'm probably not paying attention anymore. And if I see $1 billion at SOM, sorry, no. Maybe someday, but not today. And let's focus on what's realistic today.
You said to start the startup for comment for very high performance for example 1 hour per day. But how did you high quality of output for the example few minutes, few hours? What is you doing now for the high performance?
Right, so to recap, the goal of a startup is to grow quickly, to be high performance. One of the key performance metrics is high productivity per hour. So how do you maintain quality at high productivity per hour? That's a very good question. It's not really directly related to GTM, so I'll just answer shortly for now. But it's very much connected to agile development and the lean startup methodology. At Facebook, this was famously called move fast and break things, which I don't really like, but it's a good way of marketing the concept. It means move fast with short iterative cycles to test things that might be an improvement, might not. So you experiment very, very quickly. And you have to have good data measurement and very good KPIs, very good quantifiable metrics, so that you can create good experiments and determine if it was good or bad. And if it's good, test again. Might be good or bad. You go through this process and you keep trying to get better and better and better as quickly as possible. And as long as you're very focused on your metrics, then that iterative process allows you to build a better product or service while being very time efficient. So you're not wasting time on things that aren't effective. That's where being data-driven is helpful, but it's also where you have to be very precise in your goals, mapping out what you can do, and then very good at decision-making. If I keep going, that will start to be a pitch for my current company, because that's what we do. So in the interest of being unbiased, I'll stop.
Any more questions? Awesome. Oh, no? Okay, awesome. Let's give him a round of applause.